I would like to thank you all for watching my videos. It means the world to me. By request, some of you have asked if future videos can be narrated. I was reluctant at first, but soon felt that people who have a busy lifestyle might want to hear my message. So here we are. Please be sure to like and subscribe. It was New Year's Eve. Several of my newfound misfit toys found their way to my little island. They brought the booze and some party favors, and I provided the pizza. It felt nice to have everyone in my home for such a large occasion. They could have gone anywhere else, but they chose me to spend their holiday with. I felt so flattered and grateful. I had such an amazing time. We played some good music, got a few card games in, and we all didn't have a care in the world. As the clock got closer to midnight, I called my mom and family to wish them well for the New Year's. Then the countdown to midnight began.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year!
It sounded like the whole neighborhood was celebrating, as the house rumbled to the sound of fireworks. This year I feel as if I have a special reason to celebrate. Since the past 2 years were so demanding on me, it was nice to see things moving forward for a change. We all stepped outside to see the show. When we got out in my yard, it looked like a fantasy land, different colors flashing their brilliant sparks into the night sky. The sounds of loud pops and bangs were lost upon me in the years before. What a beautiful sound of freedom. Those people may not be celebrating for me, but tonight was a personal victory. Okay, so maybe we celebrated a little too hard. My brother was the first to pass out on the couch, but the rest of us stayed up talking, drinking and being dumb. Luckily we had a designated driver to take the party animals home. Yes, this was before Uber. As the night came to a close, I hugged everyone as they left and told them how much this night meant to me. I felt cared for and loved. That's when they got in the clown car and drove away. At least I think it was a clown car. I was pretty drunk. I tossed my brother a pillow and a blanket and said my good night. Well, more like good morning. It was 4 a.m. already. I stumbled down the hall and crashed on my bed. Then I slept off New Year's Day. After taking the holiday weekend off, it was time to get back to work. I woke up to a snow-covered landscape, and it didn't look like it was slowing down. This would make travel into the city difficult. 2 hours of traffic, here we come. We showed up at the site an hour late. Luckily, the carpenter lived closer and was able to open the gate. Unfortunately, this job led to many more long hours of commuting and car problems. It was costing me more than I could afford. Something had to change. Plus, I had just found out my best friend had to go back home to be with his family. He was only up my way temporarily, so I hooked him up with work to help pay his way home. This means I'll be flying solo in a big city. At that moment, I felt a rush of anxiety come over me. I needed to find work closer to home. Things just escalated after that. My hours became longer and my car was on its last leg. Then one morning it happened. The engine seized up. I was out of options. With steam rolling out of my car, I pulled to the side of the road to get to a safe place. When it was safe, I grabbed my phone and called a tow truck to come pick me up. Once I got my car to the mechanic, he took one look and said, "Oh boy." He completed his inspection and told me the radiator was clogged, causing damage to my block. The engine was unrepairable. My car just went from a beater with a heater to just a beater. The mechanic told me it was going to cost $1,500 to do a full swap out. Just when I thought I was picking myself up again, this comes along and sweeps my feet from under me. I was still rebuilding my life, and most of my earnings went towards tools, fuel, and bills, so an expense like this was out of my price range. I started to get upset, and the lady at the counter handed me a tissue. I'm sure those tissues are used a lot. No wonder they keep them behind the counter. I needed a life raft, and fast. I didn't want to lose this momentum, so with my back up against the wall, I swallowed my pride and called my mom. A few days later, and a long conversation with my mom, she collected the cash for the repairs. I don't know what I would do without her. She's like an angel with hidden wings. She came to pick me up and take me to pay for the engine swap out. The mechanic said it would be about 3 days, and I'll be back on the road. However, I still hadn't found work more homeward bound, but I did have applications out there, so my fingers were crossed. I had only been back to work about 2 weeks when I received a phone call about an application I submitted. I arranged a time for a face-to-face interview. This was my first official interview as my current self, so I dressed to impress and remembered to be prompt. The interview went well. She was impressed with my work history and seemed very open-minded. She was even polite enough to refer to me as my preferred name, despite what it said on my ID. I got the job. She wanted me to start the following Monday. I told her I'll be there with bells on. Monday morning came faster than expected, but I was ready. I've got a trunk full of tools and a head full of knowledge. I've got this. Having a full-time job meant that I could start paying my child support. I never wanted to be a deadbeat dad, and I wanted to start spending more time with my kiddo. It also meant I could have more freedom to explore this world through refreshed eyes, to live a life that I have been so envious of. 2 weeks had passed and I got my first paycheck. It was way more than my previous job. I contacted the courts to arrange bi-weekly payments, paid off my bills, and still had some money left over. This job was an hour and a half closer, and it was at a townhome complex, so I no longer had to travel between jobs. Being the weekend, I didn't have any plans. I still had friends, but they all had separate lives and families. Unfortunately, I did not. Just as I finished breakfast, I received a phone call from an online friend that I've become fond of. She was also trans, but in her late 60s. We shared similar experiences, and she appreciated the fact that I had culture she could relate to. With every conversation we had, it made me appreciate her even more. I always called her my auntie. She didn't like it very much. She was very young at heart, but very proper, and lived an eclectic life, but I still teased her anyways. She always called me a brat. She asked me what my plans were for the rest of the weekend. I replied with a simple jack squat. She then asked me if I wanted to go to the city and do some dancing. I paused for a moment and gathered the courage to say yes. I'm on an upward swing, might as well go have fun. So I packed an overnight bag, fed my fur babies, and headed out the door. Here we go. So far this year has been loaded with lots of ups and downs. We blazed down the expressway heading into the downtown district. She was taking me to an LGBT bar to see a drag show. I was never really a huge supporter because it was all too sexualized for me, but I wasn't going for them. I was going so I could have fun and be with my friend. When I got there, I had to give my ID to a tall drag queen and pay $10 for entry. I still had my old identification, and frankly, I was embarrassed for having to carry it around. I felt uncomfortable at first. This wasn't my normal scene, and I started to feel like I didn't fit in. That's when my friend introduced me to some ladies like ourselves, and the tension slowly melted. In between acts, the DJ would put on some heavy beats, and got the whole place rockin'. My friend went up to the bar and brought back some drinks, and we just started dancing. I'll tell you what, for my friend being older, she sure could move. If it wasn't for her, I would have just sat on the sidelines. After about an hour, this guy was hitting on me and getting a little too close. I started to feel dizzy, not like drunk dizzy. This was a familiar drug-induced dizzy. This guy roofied me. I stood up from the bar and made a beeline to my friend and said, "We've got to go now." I grabbed her hand and pulled her out the door. I started to stumble around, so my friend grabbed my arm to hold me steady. I was ready to pass out when I saw a donut shop across the street, so my quick thinking kicked in, and said I need plain donut holes, stat. I needed to fill my stomach to absorb the drug and alcohol. In a matter of minutes, I had a dozen holes gone. We sat outside the shop for 30 minutes or so. I had to be sure I wasn't going to have any more adverse reactions. I wanted to be somewhere public. Not to make light of this subject, but thank God for donuts. We finished our night off by visiting a 24-hour diner. I think a nice greasy burger and a milkshake should counter any remaining effects. I was seeing a side of the city that most never experience. It was way more diverse than the area I grew up in. We found a booth, grabbed some menus, and just soaked it all in. This wouldn't be the last time I go out to the city, but now I know the dangers involved, so I felt more prepared. As my former self, I always held a distaste and disdain for men who took advantage of women. Yet in a matter of 2 years, I clearly witnessed how dangerous the world has become, not only for people like myself, but for all women. Through experience and misfortune, I have a newfound respect for the feminine spirit.